Hey there, Honors Biology kids. These are organic compounds notes starting with carbohydrates today. So you should start on, I believe it would be page 5, which would be organic compounds with 4 bullets at the top, and you should write carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So today we're just going to talk about carbohydrates in this video. So carbohydrates are the simplest form are monosaccharides. Mono means one, saccharide means sugar. So glucose and galactose are examples of monosaccharides because they're made of one ring of sugar. They are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in a ratio of 1 to 2 to 1. The formula for glucose and galactose are C6H12O6. But as you can see, glucose and galactose are isomers. An isomer means that it has the same formula, C6H12O6. Both glucose and galactose have it, but different structures. So in my notes on this page, you can see where over here, the hydrogen is on the bottom and the OH group is on the top. Where if you compare that to glucose, the OH group's on the bottom and the hydrogen is on the top. So isomers are molecules, different molecules that have the same formula but different structures. So make a note of that, write isomers, that these two are isomers. The second type of carbohydrate is a disaccharide. So whereas a monosaccharide was made of one ring of sugar, disaccharides are made of 2 rings of sugar joined together. Now, don't be confused. This is one molecule of glucose. This is one molecule of sucrose. So disaccharides are larger, and they are made of 2 sugars bonded together with an oxygen, kind of like holding hands with each of the smaller sugars. But this is one molecule, just like H2O is one molecule, CO2 is one molecule. This is one molecule, but it's very large. It's by no means the largest type of carbohydrate. Sucrose, lactose, maltose are all disaccharides. Di means 2, saccharide means sugar. So we have 2 sugars making up this one molecule of sucrose. Now, who makes sucrose? Well, sugarcane. The sugarcane plant makes sucrose. So plants make these sugars. They do so by photosynthesis, which we'll study in another chapter. The third type of carbohydrate is a polysaccharide. So let's review. We have monosaccharides made of 1 ring, disaccharides made of 2 rings, and polysaccharides. And polysaccharides I have a whole slide for, so to be continued on that at the end of the notes. I have actually a slide for each one of these. Starch, glycogen, and cellulose are all example of polysaccharides. Poly means many, saccharide means sugars. So these are molecules, one molecule made of many, maybe 3, 4, 5, 100, whatever, probably chains of glucose, and it's one molecule. They kind of lose their sweetness when the chains get longer. These are pretty sweet, still pretty sweet. Sucrose is like table sugar. It's like the sugar you put in your coffee, the sugar you would use in baking, or the sugar in pixie sticks. But those are all sweet. Starch, glycogen, and cellulose are not sweet, but made of the same sugar rings. So what we have is a couple of reactions here we're going to cover. First of all, monosaccharides, which are glucose, we're going to say for now, need to be stored by the body. So you eat whatever, sugars, starches, whatever you eat as far as carbohydrates, and your body breaks them down, and so they're all here, individual glucose, but you don't need them now. I mean, you need them later, you need them when you're not eating, when you're fasting. So your body has to store these sugars, and it doesn't want to store them individually. So it needs to store them as glycogen, actually. So the process we're going to talk about now is how to take these glucose and put them together. Whoops. That process is called dehydration synthesis. So let's break the word down. Dehydration means that you've lost water. Synthesis means to bring together. So we are literally going to take these two, and we are going to take an H2O out, or an HOH. We're going to take it out, and we're going to join them together with the leftover oxygen. And now we have, like, this would be a disaccharide. So dehydration synthesis. There's another, this is the picture in your notes. We have glucose and fructose. This would be what a sugar cane plant would do in its cells. It would take glucose and fructose that it had made. It would put them together. It would take this H and this OH out to make water. That's the dehydration part. And then it would synthesize the two, which means to put them together. So the leftover O here, see this O that's not going to be lost? He's the one who holds hands with glucose and fructose to make one molecule of sucrose. There's another linear picture down here showing the same reaction. Now, the opposite reaction, opposite of dehydration synthesis, is called hydrolysis. Whenever you need to use those glucose, they have to be broken back down. And so how do you separate glucose from polysaccharides or disaccharides into monosaccharides? That's what we want. It's like you have a $10 or $20 bill and you only need ones. That's like maybe the only thing that the machine takes. So you need change. So we're going to take this big polymer, this big polysaccharide, and we're going to break it down. So hydrolysis occurs when carbohydrates are consumed as food are broken apart to form simple sugars. You're doing this all the time. It starts in your mouth with saliva. And you have to put water in, and it will break them apart. So hydrolysis is the word. Hydro means water goes in. Lysis means to break apart. So maybe write that down. Hydrolysis. It's called hydrolysis, but if you want to call it hydrolysis, that is just fine with me. Now, we're almost at the end here. I want you to put below hydrolysis notes, I want you to put a big line, because, like, all across your paper, because the bottom of the page is about the 3 types of polysaccharides. So the first type, after you've put a big line across your page, is starch. So starch are long chains of glucose molecules, like in the hundreds, and that's one actual molecule, but it's a long chain of glucose. So it looks like this. If the glucose is hexagonal, and I just draw it in a circle when I draw it, I don't even draw the hexagon. And the little group up top here is, I will show you, is this group here. So I would draw this as a circle and this as a little line at the top on the left-hand side. So let's go back to this. Starch is made only by plants. That's notable. And all the sugars are in the same direction. These are not, I don't know what you think these are. These are actual oxygen joining the 2 glucose together. And so the group, that CH2OH, comes right off of the left here at the top. And so they're all oriented in the same direction. And they are a primary source of calories. All these delicious starches look wonderful, and we eat them for our glucose. The second one is cellulose. So find this part of your notes at the bottom of the page. Cellulose is also a long chain of glucose in the hundreds, but every other sugar, every other glucose is upside down. So take a look. You know, you've got a right side up, and then it's flipped upside down. So like it actually flips the molecule upside down. Right side up, upside down. Right side up, upside down. Now, because it has this orientation, it is insoluble in water, meaning water can dissolve starch, but water cannot dissolve cellulose. Now, one thing I say in class is do not confuse cellulose with cellulite. Cellulite are fat cells, and they have nothing to do with this, with carbohydrates. They are not carbohydrates. So cellulose is actually what makes up cell walls in plant cells. And you know, plants don't have like bones and ligaments and tissues, so they need some kind of support. And so cellulose is that support. And it looks like this kind of in a microscope. It is undigestible for us, so when we eat cellulose, we call it fiber. And it kind of runs right through us, and it keeps all of our intestinal tracts cleaned out. But we do not break this down and get glucose from it. Your cells need these glucose. But when we eat cellulose, we cannot break these chains apart because they're just undigestible for us. And really that should say undigestible for humans. They make up our cell wall, they make up plant cell walls, and we call them fiber. Cotton, wood, paper are all examples of cellulose. And the last one, oh, here's a picture of cellulose. I forgot about this. So here is cellulose, and if you notice, every other one is flipped upside down, and they're actually joined together even in both directions, and then they are layered on each other, and they form this really nice, solid structure to help plants maintain their shape. And it's very nice they're insoluble in water. If they were soluble in water, then every time it rained, plants would completely dissolve. And you know that would be the end of our life on this planet. Glycogen is the third one, and find it in your notes. Glycogen is also a glucose polymer, which just means it's made of many glucose, and it is right here. This is the one we make. The first two, starch and cellulose, plants, they both make those. We make glycogen, okay? Animals make glycogen in our liver and muscles. And the way it's oriented is that it's in branches. And so here's an example of a big glycogen, and it is branched off. You would find glycogen in your liver. You would find it in your actual muscle cells waiting to be used. It's kind of like a little snack pack for your cells. When they need glucose, they can break those apart by what process? Actually, hydrolysis would break these apart, but and then the muscle cells can use them. But the reaction that makes glycogen in the liver and muscles, like actually makes these branch chains, is the opposite of hydrolysis, and that would be what? It's a thing where you lose a water and you put two of these together, and then you put these two and these two and these two, and you make this long chain. It's called dehydration synthesis. So that is the end of Carbs notes.